we're going to talk about how to move from the world in which we live in today, a world which has a system of scarcity that's artificially designed. That world is full of hoarding. It's full of distribution problems. And we're going to talk about how do we change that into a world of abundance, a world in which scarcity is largely addressed, a world in which the poor have equal access to the things that the middle class and the wealthy have, and where the middle class have access to tools that have only been available to the wealthiest and those in power in the world today. There are 4 technologies that are going to change everything that the average person has never heard of and may never need to know anything about. These technologies, according to some, will create potentially one massive new market, a market that will dwarf even what we see is going on today in AI, a market that is projected by some to be as large as $10 trillion within the next decade, creating 10 trillion in new GDP, and 100 trillion in the following decade. In this environment, the next generation of blockchain technology, called computable contracts, will replace the early things that we have today. Just like we don't fly in biplanes today that were the early planes of the flying air, we fly in jet aircraft. Far safer, much easier to use, something that we use without thinking. Computable contracts, and another thing that's part of them called decentralized authority rights, with workflows that allow us to create digital representations of regulations, laws, and agreements, are going to fundamentally allow us to automate intermediaries out of our societies on a gradual path that will lead to lower and lower friction. The next technology is synchronized accounting. Most of us don't really think about accounting, but how we account for things is very important in understanding their value. It's very important in understanding what's actually making money and what's losing money, what's going to be valuable in the future and what isn't going to be valuable in the future. And synchronized accounting enables something that almost sounds like science fiction, which is real-time audit of financials between parties. The next is digital rights. Digital rights are what tokenization will move into as we start tokenizing assets. Just tokenizing the equity value is beneficial, but it's not the end of the story. Just as a field that a farmer might have owned in Texas or in Oklahoma a century ago that may have had oil underneath it that they wouldn't have known about, they would not have thought about. And we figured out how to separate rights to the minerals from the rights to the land. So we can sell the same acre of land for cattle grazing and the same acre of land for extraction of the minerals under the ground. We can create rights that separate out all sorts of things from assets, unlocking value that was always there but was never accessible, unlocking value that only the largest corporations or the biggest funds could have unlocked, making it available through technology for average people to access. The final one is that these 3 technologies are enabling something called mutualized DePIN. DePIN stands for decentralized infrastructure networks. These are physical infrastructure networks that are decentralized in their ownership and operation. Think of it as a technology-run enterprise. Today, these are toys compared to what we are talking about here. Today, these are early examples which prove prototypes of what is possible. But the future isn't going to be doing this with some new technology, widget, AI, and these things. It's going to be doing it with ports, bridges, the assets that we have in the world today. These technologies are going to change the way that we own things and govern them. They're going to allow us to create alternatives to extractive debt. They're going to change civil services because we will be able to bring in digital societies. And they are going to, as a result, have a huge impact on how we govern. Everything from companies to the organizations that we're part of and the states that we participate in as citizens. All of this is going to enable us to take the major asset categories of the world and turn them into infrastructure. Infrastructure which can be used by anyone and can be owned by anyone simply by using the infrastructure. Rent a flat, over time, you end up owning the value of the flat. Lease a car, over time, you end up owning the value of the car. So much that you get your next car for free. All of this is going to be powered by some new technologies that are going to use financial engineered systems to create and release new value, transferring ownership from where it's locked up today into the world of abundance. You see, we have a problem today. The average individual holds only 4% of the major asset classes in the capital markets today. High net worth individuals hold 18%, and institutions own a whopping 78%. These institutions own the commodities, the equities, the debt instruments that we all use to live and need to flourish. And they're primarily pension funds, insurance companies, large funds for wealth, and banks. In this world we have today, investors own 88% of all of these asset classes. Yet the workers in our companies only own 12% and create a lot of the value. And of that 12%, the majority of that is owned by a very small number of senior executives. Our debt has the highest interest rate for the poorest on the planet. Yet one can argue they're the most productive because they can actually pay these high interest rates. You have to have a credit rating or assets that you can put up to get debt in the world today. And everything that you borrow, you have to pay back or you go bankrupt. And when you do, that destroys your credit. All of the payments require you to have cash. So even if you have assets on the book of your company, you can't actually pay your bills with that. You have to have cash. Ownership is primarily in the form of shares. Shares that are earned as a result of making investments.
possibly gained through the efforts of an entrepreneur who starts and builds up a business which is not tradable. It has equity that is very difficult to sell without going to a private equity firm or taking the organization public. You might be gifted this by somebody, but if you are, the equity has value, and in most of the world it's taxed. You might earn it through working for a business, but again, if you're given it versus paying for it via an option, you're likely to be taxed in most of the world. All of our IP is locked up by these institutions who use it to control their futures, to protect themselves from others, and to control the value that they have for their shareholders. But it doesn't necessarily benefit all of those who create the IP or all the rest of us who could benefit from using the IP. And it's very complicated to use. We have to pay fees to use it, and those fees have to be paid in cash. The goal of this world is to be a shareholder. If you can be a shareholder, you will have amassed value for yourself that someday maybe you can sell, retire, and have a few years at the end of your life after working most of your life to have some pleasure. All of this is going to change. And the first change is going to be brought about by these technologies through the creation of shared intellectual property pools. Intellectual property which is in open source pools that has automatic licensing that anyone using it can use, that's simple to read and understand. Something that is free to use if you pay for it in points, where it takes no cash. It's just free. But if you're on this side of the world and you want to use it, you still have to pay fees. So if you are participating in a world of abundance, you can use points that you receive every month to pay for this IP. But if you are in a system of scarcity, you still have access to this IP. You're not excluded from it, but that IP is paid for with cash. Now this shared pool of IP, where we move private IP into public IP, is the gateway to a bridge that uses a 3-token system to engineer massive economic value increase that's caused by the use of real-world assets, infrastructure assets, things that everybody has to have, everybody has to use. These assets are the most stable and highly valued assets in the world today. Using this 3-token system, we can actually pay for bonds to buy the assets over here in the system of scarcity and move them as if they're on trucks across this bridge. And the first of these systems, which is highly engineered to all work together in a very powerful dynamic, is the token that's whole purpose is to acquire IP. That token is the Conduit Network Token, or CNDT. The Conduit Network is a protocol for creating what you might think of as a new version of the internet that has open-sourced IP, usable by anyone, no topco companies, no topco organizations, that has the role of being the currency you must use to pay for royalties. It takes that and it uses that to acquire intellectual property that it puts into the Conduit Network trusts. It's a token which can be mined by anyone, simply by paying for IP or contributing IP to the trust. The next central pillar, the engine, the main force of thrust economically, is a token called mutualized depend token. It is a token that is used to pay for every asset, every service, every product that is bought by bonds and moved out of the system of scarcity into our world of abundance. Its role is the central settlement currency that's used to fund everything and all economic activity. It is similar in function to the country of China, which has 2 currencies, one which is used externally and one which is used internally. It is created by anyone. It is not mined, nor is it minted. And to create it, you have to take an SWCX token and a CNDT token and use a process called asset alchemy to combine them together and convert them into an MDPN token. This means that you can never be out of balance between these two, and the most of these that can ever exist is the lowest of the 2 of these in the market. These are used by mutualized society trusts that are trusts that operate for the benefit of everyone in a new reward system that both buyers and sellers participate in. A mutualized reward system. A mutualized reward system that uses a sweet coin token to pay off bonds as the assets cross this bridge so that by the time they reach the other side, they're debt-free. They have no debt. In this new world, in this world of abundance, a new ownership interest, which is non-equity, that can't be purchased. It can only be earned, given, or transferred upon a party's death. It's non-transferable, which means you can never lose it. No one can ever take it away from you. And when you die, it goes to your descendants. Because it's non-transferable, it has no economic value, though it produces points every single month that lower your cost. It's much better to have lower cost than higher income. If you have a tax rate on your income of 30% and you make $1,000, you only take home $700. But if you get $1,000 worth of points that actually reduce your cost, you get $1,000 of cost reduction. That's much better than $700 of income. This becomes an entirely new mechanism that uses points that are given to people every month. These points are backed by the value of MDPN. As we dive deeper, we will show how the economics here are designed to cause massive uplift in value. And as Bitcoin has proven, by just doing payment, you can get a market cap valuation of $2 trillion. By actually creating a settlement currency for everything, you can create a lot more than 2 billion. You can create a lot more than 2 trillion. you can create a lot more than 20 trillion in value if it's the settlement currency for everything. All of this allows us to move to a new world. A world where IP is shared. IP still requires royalties, but the royalties can be paid in points that everybody gets from their squares that they earn every month. Points that, as they earn them, grow in value, as we will see, over time. And unlike mining, actually get to be greater and greater in number every month. Not by some magic, by the same mechanism that makes a company that's growing as an enterprise. Shareholders have value that go up. In the same way that that happens, the value of the points increases each month over time. And the number of points increases as well, as we will see. This means that we now have a new incentive. An incentive to participate as a producer or a customer, as somebody who is a worker or somebody who actually is a consumer. A consumer and a worker who end up being customers and workers who own 50% of all the assets. Not because of some theoretical idea, but because of math. Math that you can inspect, math that you can trust. Not because of somebody who says it works, but because you can read the math that says it works. This enables a new type of credit that's non-extractive, requires no interest, requires no credit rating, because it's actually based on the amount of squares that you have. Interest, which if you can't pay it back, is automatically forgiven after 7 years. Debt that is paid for by points. Imagine having a credit card that you can charge anywhere for anything that you could buy with a credit card. And at the end of the month, you can take the points that you earned and pay your credit card bill, using none of your cash, none of your hard-earned money. Imagine a business who can do that with its inventory. That's the world of abundance. A world in which trusts that operate for the benefit of you and your family own all of the assets. Assets that have no debt, so they have higher profit margins. Imagine a home without a mortgage, where when you make payments to the home to pay for your house, over a 10 to 12 year period of time, you end up owning the value of the house through these trusts. Trusts that are operated not by people, but by technology. Something called a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization, which is an organization run by code, not AIs, something much more predictable than that. Something where you can prove it will do this if this event occurs. A world in which the key asset classes change from being commodities, equities, and debt to rewards, rights, and tokens. And as a result, shift the ownership so that the average people of the world own 90% of the value in the world of abundance. Institutions will benefit as well, though they will hold a smaller percentage in the world of abundance. But in the world of abundance, the amount of value that is unlocked in this world is significantly greater, because this is a mutualized world. It's a place where we need fewer intermediaries, where trust is produced not just by humans that we know and trust, but can be produced by math. So that I can work with people I don't know. I haven't yet learned whether I can trust. Math that prevents bad people from hurting good people. Math that prevents us from being defrauded. Math that prevents us from experiencing errors. Automation that helps us live our lives more abundantly. This bridge is a bridge you don't need to know anything about. All of this detail, all of the information, the deep dives that we will go into each of these areas to understand how they work, you actually don't need to know this. Just like bridges that you drive across today, this bridge is accessed through something as simple as the device that most of the world carries with it every day. A device that is the gateway to technology. Technology which is now shared. You can cross this bridge without knowing anything about how the bridge is built. You don't need to know about how the central support pillars have been engineered, how they can hold up all the mass that's represented by the bridge and all the traffic that moves across it, how they can expand the bridge so it can go from 2 lanes to 4 lanes to 8 lanes to 16 lanes wide, moving more and more traffic across that bridge. You don't have to know any of that. We all cross bridges routinely, and we never give it much thought. You won't have to give this much thought either. Only those who build must know how it works, because the builders are the ones who make sure the bridge works, that it's safe, that it won't collapse in conditions that are unexpected. They do this with math. You see, math is provable. The claim of the engineer about their bridge can be proven with the math about their bridge. In the same way, the claims that we are making here today can be proven with the math. Because we don't have to trust those that we don't know. We just have to trust the math. It's what tells us the bridge will not collapse. It's how our inspectors detect whether the bridge has been properly built. Most of us don't realize how much the world has changed in the last 15 years just with this. We don't really think about it much. People are talking all the time about AI, how it's going to change our world, and it will. And it will be a part of this journey as well. But the key technologies that are going to make this happen, most people don't need to know about. Just like the key technologies that make this work, most of us don't need to know anything about. We just need to know what we can do differently. We just need to know that by driving a car, I get to own the car. By renting the flat, I get to own the value of the flat. By flying on the airplane, I own part of the airline. That's all we really need to know. Because the experience of lower cost is revolutionary. Greater income only leaves me in an experience of trying to get more and more and more. Lower cost, where do I go when my cost is 0? As a business, if I have no cost, where do I go? Where do I go from there? As a person, if I have no cost, where do I go from there? Creates a completely different mindset for our world. Welcome to the introduction to a world of abundance.